Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for being here. So let me introduce to you my interlocutors. That would be to my immediate right, Sam Sadigursky, whose music you just heard and was just performed on stage. And we're so thrilled to also have Marisa Scheinfeld with us today, whose photographs, which were actually on exhibit here a number of years ago for quite a while, are what inspired Sam to make the music you just heard. And obviously that is what we will explore in, we've got 45 minutes here, so we're gonna do a little show and tell and talking and stuff up here, and we'll try to leave time, and I'm sure we will be able to for a few questions at the end, because I'm sure you'll want to ask them. So, to kick things off, Sam, that was such a gorgeous concert. Congratulations. Yeah, let's hear it for Sam and his music. The playing by you and Nathan is fabulous. Oh, Sam was just named by Downbeat magazine, which is the Bible of jazz, as one of the 10 rising stars of jazz clarinet music. So you're here at the beginning of what's going to be an auspicious career, no doubt, and already is. Oh, by the way, Matt Daria was disappointed that he didn't get to see you last night.
Yeah, good buddy.
So what really struck me in listening to your music live was how painterly it was, how pictorial it was. It just really, it was evocative, emotionally, but also just in the way you compose, or I don't know if all your compositions are like this, but having that painterly quality. And of course, knowing that it was actually inspired by visual art to begin with. I don't know if there's a connection there or if that's something you are conscious of in your composition or your approach to music, but does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. There's always a mood, sort of, that's one of that starts most compositions for me. Mm-hmm. And then part of it is just Nathan and I have been able to play so many times where I think we just there's a comfort level between us of just, a certain patience and letting things sit.
Yeah.
That also helps create those moods.
Great.
A lot of the pieces at first, had this big airy quality to them, and they were more landscapes, and then they kind of evolved and went somewhere different as maybe pivoted, but just learned more of the history of the region and sort of had more ideas of other pieces I wanted to write.
So you came across Marisa's book, her The Borscht Belt.
Yes.
Revisiting the remains of America's Jewish Vacationland. Can you portray that scene for us, when you saw how you came upon the book and how the idea first came to you that maybe there was music in what you were looking at?
Sure. I grew up on the West Coast. I have kind of no direct connections to the regions, but I've lived in New York since I was 18, and being a struggling young musician, wanting to occasionally get away, I just found, wow, the Catskills. There was a place I would stay for $35 a night, I remember. And so it was just fascinating to me that there was this place so close to the city that was so gorgeous that, at that point seemed like it was in a pretty dire place, commercially and not getting much traffic. That's all changed, dramatically, I think, in the last 20 years. Yeah, and then both my kids went to preschool at a synagogue, and there was I would often actually just stay there and practice and write while they were in school, because their school day was 3 hours a lot of the days. And I would hang out in the library, and that's where I found Marisa's book. But I'd also I was really looking for something at that point. I was in a Broadway show, The Band's Visit. Probably those of you in the New York area, many of you saw that. I was the clarinetist with the aviator sunglasses playing an Arab. So, yeah, these Jewish and Arabic sounds and more sort of like folky sounds had become much, much deeper a part of my world in those years. And I had also taken a break from a lot of the writing and band leading that I like to do because 8 shows a week was a real grind, and my kids were very, very young at that point. So yeah, I was really looking for my next step, the next thing I wanted to do, and really consciously wanted to do something that was, maybe more folk-inspired.
Great. Marisa, so now that we've got that part, let's go back in time a bit, and can you, in a few minutes, tell us the story of how this project came to be?
Sure. Well, I do want to start off by just saying to Sam that when he told me that he felt inspired by my work, I was absolutely floored. And I continue to be honored because that was just such an evocative, beautiful presentation and music to hear. So for me, when I started thinking about what kind of work I wanted to make, it needed to be something with depth. It needed to be something that said something to me and kept me going. And I found that Jewish topics were always something that I gravitated to. And I did a project on Holocaust survivors and came back, photographed camps throughout Eastern Europe. And when I came back to the States, I felt uninspired. And a mentor said, well, if you don't know what to shoot, shoot what you know. The Borscht Belt is really not just a geographical location, it's the place that I grew up. So it's part of the tapestry of my life. This is a photograph of it in its heyday. It was comprised of over 500 hotels and 50,000 bungalows. So I lived some of it as a kid because my grandparents went there, they met there. My parents moved up there in '85 and still live there. And when this kind of phrase came to me, shoot what you know, that was really how the project began. I knew my hometown had this vibrant history. We see it here. It was a place that forged connections, community, culture. It also was a place where entertainment and comedy was put on the map. Some of the biggest theaters in the country modeled after other places like Las Vegas and Atlantic City, and all of these places kind of used the Borscht Belt as a model. So I started digging into the past, and in that's how the project evolved. And this is Sullivan County, #1 in the nation for a zestful, restful vacation, because it really was the place to be. And the project was a 5-year investigation, and one of the things that jarred me that I didn't know growing up in the Borscht Belt was the reason why it was created, and this slide says it all. Owning to neighborhood preferences, Hebrews are requested not to apply. And documents like Jew jokes or other documents like the Jewish Vacation Guide, where Jews are welcome, they really kind of, put me in this place. Well, now I realize why the Borscht Belt was created. And I've heard Sam actually speak on a podcast, and you used the word revolutionary. Mm-hmm. And it really was a revolutionary act, because the Jews said, well, you don't want us to be part of your club, so we are going to create our own. And these are the ads and the early ads that really set the stage in the 1920s for what became the Borscht Belt. I'll go through a few photographs. This is Grossinger's when it was a farmhouse. They moved up there. The land is evocative of Eastern Europe, and I think that's why many Jewish immigrants coming to America were drawn to the region. And eventually it became known like this, like places like Grossinger's, where there was its own zip code, and Grossinger's had everything. So from small, little, humble beginnings, and born on the backbone of hatred and anti-Semitism, grows this really flourishing era. And
The first Jews in the region were farmers.
Yep.
From what I know, so there was a certain like survival element there, and Jews sort of this wave of Jews wanting to get out of the slums of the Lower East Side and find something, and they just realized it was horrible farmland.
Horrible, yeah. Horrible farmland. And I think what happens, especially with Grossingers, is these boarders come into your farmhouse to stay, and from boarding houses grow smaller hotels, and then eventually bigger and bigger hotels. And this one, to me, says it all because it shows the magical landscape of the Borscht Belt and of the Catskills. It shows that era of mid-century architecture and really the community and the joy that grew out of that era. These are some more images, and I will get into some images in my book in a minute. So when I started the project, this is what I did. I would find an image, and then I would jump in and...
That's the juxtaposition that inspired my piece, Postcard.
Oh.
Actually.
Oh, awesome. And
Yeah,
you just played
there.
that, right?
Yeah, we just played that.
So I would love to hear more about that. It just...
What was it? What
There's
was
just
it
a
about
vibe. Well, no, I mean just like that. Yeah, there's just a vibrance and a joy in that. In this picture.
Right.
That-
And this
that I
one's
was trying to
yours.
avoid.
Yes.
Yes.
So I would find archival images using the Catskills Institute. That's been a wonderful repository for me. Phil Brown started it. And then I'd go to the place where it was made previously. So I kept doing this, and this is how the project started. I'd find a postcard of the Pines. This is the ice skating rink. Then I'd go to the ice skating rink, and then I'd put them together. So this is called rephotography. It's a technique that photographers have been using since the early days of the medium, 1830s, 1850s. And this is what I thought my book was going to be. It was this now and then view that kind of triggered, well, what happens over time, what changes, what remains the same, what can I find, and where can I position myself so I make these views. And then what quickly happened was I realized there was much of a story to tell than that now and then. So the book starts with these juxtapositions of postcards and then jumps into places like Grossingers, which now is leveled, as are most of the images or locations in my book. But I think you played Grossinger's Bride, right?
Yeah,
that
yes.
was one of the ones. So the images for me are very layered. They're obviously rooted in the past. It is the Borscht Belt and as many places that I could find, various hotels, pools, shuffleboard courts, and it was an obsession in a way to document what remained, but it became very layered because it was the Borscht Belt in a very present moment. And that's kind of what I see in or I hear and see when I watch you play, and I hear in the albums that you created, is that layering. It has so many different sounds and so many different influences, and some people have remarked that my book kind of pulls on the heartstrings. It also evokes joy and a lot of sadness as well. And when I listened to your albums, it did a similar thing for me. It evoked all of those feelings that others have said about my work, so it feels really wonderful to feel that in yours, and that connection, I think, is really strong. A lot of these places, this is an unknown bungalow colony, so there were over, thousands of bungalow colonies, and I think at the time, not everything was documented, but so many things were. You were talking about this hotel, right?
Yes, many of you, or some of you certainly remember the Paramount Hotel because Klevskamp was there for, 10, 20 years. Did any of you were at Klevskamp at the Paramount Hotel? Oh, I'm surprised. Anyway, so you have a bunch of photos from the Paramount Hotel.
Yeah, so the book has, I think, about 50 different hotels. I photographed the hotels that were abandoned, that were stagnant, not the ones that have been repurposed as ashrams or meditation centers or Orthodox camps or yeshivas or new hotels, but really it was these eyesores that drew me in, that I think using photography as a way to document this cultural history, but also places that I knew were eventually going to be gone. This bungalow colony is actually being rehabbed right now. So there's a really interesting storyline that continues from the book, where certain places are abandoned. Certain places like this, now the people are actually, this is called the Lesser Lodge. That was a small hotel. People are living in one of the guest houses. So there's this cyclical nature of the book, but then a lot of feelings in between it. Apocalypse like this of the kitchen. And I'm the type of photographer where, at least with this book, it was everything as I found it. I did not manipulate the scenes. It was just go into Grossinger's, see the sheets strewn on the bed, find the tamarack burned from a fire, and see this elevator shaft almost like a totem pole, this symbol that survived and persisted. And you know, I don't stray that the book is melancholy, and I don't want to, and I think the passing of time itself is melancholy in itself. But I also think there's a peculiar beauty, and that's what I hear in your work. One of the blurbs called it avant-garde, but I was feeling that it was surreal. And that was my experience often with photographing, you know, seeing a theater that was now a skate park, seeing a dining room that was now a paintball battlefield. Strange juxtapositions and very peculiar, but nevertheless all embedded with lots of different stories. You could see this peach at the top. They started painting, and then clearly they never finished. And this was a new wing of Grossinger's in the late 80s that they created before the hotel went bankrupt. This hotel burned a few days ago. It was called the Homoac. Has anyone ever been to the Homoac? Yeah. It burned. Yeah, there were 2 fires in 2 weeks. And, you know, there's definitely a lot of turnover going on in the Catskills. This is the Nevele. It's positioned now to reopen.
What did you say? The Nevele what?
The Nevele is someone's working on it to reopen it.
As the Nevele?
I don't know if they're going to call it the Nevele, but I keep my ears out to hear what they're going to do and what they're going to save. This pool was just one of the most majestic structures I had ever found when I was doing this project, and unfortunately it was leveled. You know, when I was working on the book early on, a lot of people would tell me there's nothing there. There's nothing there. And it took me a few years, because this was a 5-year project, to be able to say, well, there is something there and you're not looking. You know, there is not only for me a personal history, but there's a collective history of the Jewish experience, Catskill history, state history, history of entertainment, history of American culture. You know, where the Borscht Belt crosses over into American culture is where most people who are not Jewish understand it, where we talk about these big names who came up, and musicians and comedians and the like.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you actually get into most of these places?
Permission was important to me, mainly because I know that these are tenuous, unstable places, and a lot of them were in flux, for sale, in between sales. Some had lawsuits. So I needed to go slow and not rush. I shoot with a camera, medium format, it's bulky, it's not that big, but I needed to not rush. And getting permission was very important to me because I knew that I would be allowed to be there and not have to rush, exactly. But sometimes I did trespass. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but I was on this quest to just photograph as many hotels as I could. Grossinger's, for example, when I was photographing there, the golf course was opened. So I forged a friendship with one of the golf course employees who would kind of just give me the nod and say, okay, park here and you can go to the hotel. And he would tell me where not to go and where to go and places that were unstable. And this is the cover of the book at Grossinger's. And I knew that this was going to be the cover because it speaks to a paradise that's lost. And I don't ever want to say or compare my work to Vishniac, but it is that vanished world.
Can we hold off? We're going to do
Yeah,
a Q&A
we're
at
almost
the
there,
end.
yeah. But when I was listening to the music, I went back and was thinking about myself walking through these hallways, and I hear what you heard. Like, it's hard for me to say this, but what I saw, I hear it, the layers of in your work. It's
Thank you.
That's a great segue, because what I want to try to, and I know that this is like, there may be no way of answering this, but I want to try as best I can. From you seeing these images, or a particular image, because you did base some of the compositions on a very specific image.
Mm-hmm.
How, we're looking at these photos, and they're so narrative. There's every individual photo tells at least one, but mostly many stories, just through your genius of finding the shot and capturing it in the frame and how you frame it. So for you then, how are you parlaying the actual tangible image into the music? Is it just a kind of a mood thing? Is it, but especially when you're talking about, well, this was inspired by, this entertainment room. How does that work, if you can, compositionally?
Yeah, I have to say, sometimes it sort of happens in reverse too,
Okay.
where the piece is sort of there, and then oftentimes I would kind of like go back to the book. Yeah, for me, very few of them are tied to specific images. It's more sort of like the general themes, all these things that Marisa's talking about. And also, like, I kept coming back to this feeling that also, it's so easy to feel a certain nostalgia or melancholy looking at these images maybe, but, we should also celebrate. There's a lot to celebrate in that, that this region kind of fell in a large part because Jews started to assimilate more, and all these, very, overt restrictions on Jews being members, started to lift. Younger generations felt more tied to America,
Right.
and ready to sort of forge their own paths.
Yes.
So
Great.
there,
Well,
there's a complexity, there that is really interesting to me.
do you ever attempt to? Do you ever think of it in terms of narrative or telling a story?
It's very hard. It's a very abstract exercise.
I know.
So yeah, I think for me it was a very general feeling, typically,
Yeah.
and then something that also takes shape as a piece progresses as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Over how long a period of time did you work on the whole cycle?
I tend to find something like a group of instruments or kind of like a new project, and then really write a lot of material very fast, and then kind of go back to it. Yeah. So yeah, most of it was written, I don't know, a period of about a year. We recorded, I think, 30 songs, and there's probably 15 others or so that we haven't recorded. So,
Before we open it to questions,
Yeah.
so where we're at today, you have you've extended this beyond the photography and talk
Yeah.
about the marker project.
Sure. So I guess this is the last image I have, and in many ways the book was an elegy to the Borscht Belt, but at the same breath it was a celebration, because I think there's this duality. I am working on a new book, but I was presented with a wonderful opportunity by the Jewish American Society for Historic Preservation, and that was to place historic markers in the Borscht Belt. There's not one anywhere, and it's astounding. Before we jump to questions, I started this last August with a small team. They're my dream team, I call them, the Borscht Belt Historical Marker Project. And basically, we identify locations, all the towns that the Borscht Belt was comprised of, and mainly Sullivan and Ulster County. We're making a historic marker trail. They will connect. They have images on them, which makes them, I think, appealing to different generations, especially a younger generation who knows nothing about it. And there's also QR code plates that go next to it. And eventually, we're going to have a driving tour. So we had an event in Monticello, and we have 2 more coming up this August, more in the fall and into 2024. So I'm really excited, because I think it's a natural progression for me to do something more permanent in the Borscht Belt. So check us out. Our website's May the Borscht Be With You. And I've also included Sam, it's funny, right? But it's also serious, Borscht Belt Historical Markers, so it should be joyful too. And I put Sam's website here and my book, and I'm really happy to be here. I'll be signing copies of the book afterwards, and your album's here for sale, and yeah.
Great.
Thank you all.
So we're going to open it to questions now. I may need to repeat the question so everybody can hear it. So yes, you.
I had 2 questions. I think Sam answered one about what caused the downfall of the Borscht Belt resource. But actually, if anybody, either you want to expand on that, that's fine. But the other question I have is, there have been some representations of some of these places in popular culture. I think of Dirty Dancing and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel as 2. Do you think they're fair? And are there others that you would recommend?
So the questions were, can elaborate a little bit more on the reasons for the decline of the Borscht Belt, and plus, what about, how do you feel about the portrayals of the Borscht Belt in popular culture in movies like Dirty Dancing and like the TV series Mrs. Maisel?
yeah, I'll answer the first question. I think the decline, it was a number of factors. It was air travel, the rise of air travel was a big one. I think a lot of Jews.
So Florida became the Borscht Belt.
Florida, international travel, any travel to the West Coast, anywhere, and just having access to go further places in the summer. As I mentioned before, just a certain assimilation of the younger generations. The younger generations probably not wanting to be tied so much to, what they perceived as something, connected to the older generations. I lost my train of thought.
So many reasons. I mean, and someone said it's a book. It is a book, the decline. People say air conditioning, cruise industry, growth and proliferation of the suburbs. 1965 was also the signing of the Anti-Discrimination Act. So a lot of historians have pegged that moment where Jews, minorities, people of color, people who were excluded from a lot of American places, businesses, banks, going to a gas station, staying in a hotel, the world opened up to them. So I think that shifted. And then the 60s, obviously a very intense decade with the Vietnam War, civil rights movement, women's lib, Woodstock, lots of changes going on. And I think the Borscht Belt failed to kind of keep up with those changes for a lot of the younger generation.
Great questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then just the Mrs. Maisel Dirty Dancing. I think they're 2 very nice depictions. I think both have their flaws, but I think both were successful. But I do point to A Walk on the Moon with Liev Schreiber and what's her name, Diane Lane, that depicts the bungalow colonies quite well, and movies like Sweet Lorraine, which is a little bit of a sleeper film. It's hard to find, but that movie also talks about the Borscht Belt in a really authentic way. So there's a few out there.
Over here. You, yes.
Two questions. One, I am an Atlanta-born and bred Southern girl who's the daughter of a former busboy from one of the hotels there. And I have a comment or question for both of you. One is, I do feel sadness because what's going on in the world, particularly right now with the rise of anti-Semitism coming up out of the ground again, I feel like I wish we had a place to go again where we could just feel that community spirit. So that makes me a little sad about that. But I wanted to know how you guys got connected. You saw the book, you were reading it at a preschool. And you just picked the phone and called her, and did you think this was like a prank call? Or what?
No, I think you emailed me.
I think so.
Told me about it, and we met down the street from Purchase College, where I teach, and in a
Yeah.
parking lot.
Yes.
And I think that was it. And I was a new mom at the time, and it was hard for me to kind of come to your shows, and it has continued to be with the pandemic. And I just had a baby a month ago, but
This was the first time Marisa's actually heard the music
yeah,
live.
this is the first time
Yeah.
I've heard it live, and it was really a wonderful treat, because I've obviously listened to it on my speakers at home, but to hear it here was just marvelous. It was gorgeous in every way.
Yes, you.
Right, I never lived in New York City. You know, I mean, my parents were immigrants. I was an immigrant, but we did not settle in New York. And I so associate the Catskills, the Borscht Belt. I so associate it as part of the New York Jewish experience. Jews that settled in places like Ohio or California or North Carolina, Texas, wherever, Arizona, I'm not aware that any of them experienced this culture. I don't think it was part of their experience. Even Philadelphia, for that matter, which is the whole area, you know, it's in the northeastern area, but I totally associate this with the New York Jewish experience.
It very much is, and I think the reason why the Borscht Belt boomed was its proximity to New York. And all of the people coming to New York, immigrating to New York, living in the city, this 90-mile destination where you can take a day trip. It's not 6 hours, it's not 8 hours, it's close enough for the weekend. And I think that allowed it really to thrive. And I think that continues to be one reason why the region is also experiencing a renaissance, because again, of its proximity and the ability to go there very easily, especially nowadays where people with the pandemic want to maybe go on airplanes less, and you can take your own car and get there very easily.
Yeah, and the mega growth of the region really took place once I-87
Yep.
was built, and you know, a 5-hour drive became a 2.5 or 3-hour drive.
Exactly, yeah.
Woodstock, though, as being one of the factors that you mentioned.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mean that Woodstock contributed to its decline. Woodstock happened because the Borscht Belt, I think, had hotels for a lot of the entertainers to stay. I meant that the era and the thinking around that of change, of newness, of shifting the tides of different roles and identity, you know, of America shifting, that I meant that the Borscht Belt became stale as a result of that.
If I could just interject about that, what's interesting, a little tangent, but relevant to what we're talking about here, is that in the town of Bethel, in the summer of 1969, somebody wanted to put on an outdoor concert, and he found. He actually wanted it to be in Woodstock, but Woodstock said, no, we don't want you. And he found a dairy farm owned by an old Jewish guy named Max Yazger, rented the farm. Max was thrilled to help out and take part. So that's where you get this funny little conjunction between the Jewish Catskills and the culture of the 1960s, you know, as culminating in the Woodstock Festival. We got a lot of questions, so we got to go fast. One question per person. Yes.
I spent many years as a kid in the Borscht Belt, and I have some of it written in my memoirs. And if I get in touch with you, can I speak to you about what happened to me and my experiences?
Sure, I'm happy to also include it on the town on the historical marker project, because we are, interested in some histories. But I can connect you to some people who are recording oral histories, because that may be something that would be better suited.
I would be glad to.
Sure,
And I remember
I'll give you
the
my
name.
card.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Back there, yes.
I just have a quick question for Sam.
Yeah.
What is that saxophone?
It's actually a bass clarinet, commonly mistaken for a saxophone because it was invented by Adolph Sax. Hence, it has that same shape, but it's a bass clarinet.
Richie.
Yeah, I want to ask one other musical question to Sam about how Seth was pushing you about like your compositional inspiration and like symbolism or narrative.
Speak up, Richie.
Oh yeah, and like how you incorporate any potential shred of narrative or symbolism in your music. Because I do have to say, as a drummer who kind of like plays drum beats for a living, I hear composers, I hear your composition in particular, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm hearing someone feeling sad right now, and then there's this little bit where it gets a little bit happy, but then it speeds up. So I'm hearing narrative like all the time in your music. And maybe it's just the way I listen to it, but I wonder if I could get you to talk more about like, okay, that postcard about the shoreline there, like do you take any kind of specific tropes or from the photographs when you're composing, or is it all really just that?
It's pretty abstract.
Yeah.
And for me, composing is like a very, very ecstatic act that is very hard to describe. But a lot of what you're talking about happens in Nathan and I developing the pieces. They're sort of they take on new lives once we start playing them and working them out, and that they continue to evolve. And I think there's also like a really special connection between just like the art of improvisation, and just like playing things that really vanish, and just the general thing of these photographs. And to me, like so much of the feelings I got looking at the photographs were just like how incredibly impermanent our worlds are, and just how they, how quickly things that seem so incredibly robust can vanish. And you look at these photos of these places that, it looks like they were chased out by villains.
It feels apocalyptic.
They left.
In a
there's
hurry.
like actually we never recorded it, but there's a piece called Prayer Book. Just like there are prayer books just left on the floor, just sitting there open.
Yes, sir, back there.
I grew up in Long Beach, on Long Island, and the beach clubs there were very much copies of what was in the Catskills. Not quite as elaborate, but it looked very, very similar.
Interesting.
I've heard there was also, I think in Illinois or Michigan, that there was like a small enclave of a Jewish community that was like a small little Borscht Belt offshoot. So there must have been multiple.
Yes.
Well, I thank you because it brought back very good memories for me. Places where the Concord growing up and just seeing the lot and brought back wonderful memories. But also part of the Borscht Belt, like that was, we used to on winter time, but in the summer, all the sleepaway camps, and a lot of them have disappeared as well. Have you ever thought about doing any photographs of them and the history of them, because it's such an important part of the Borscht Belt?
Yeah. Yeah, when I started the book and midway through, I didn't know, the camps are important, but I think I really zeroed in on the hotels and bungalows. And now that we're doing the marker project honoring the hotels and bungalows, one of them is honoring a camp. So It's a thought, and they are disappearing. And but yeah, you know, I guess I'm just trying to narrow the focus down, and I'm not trying to exclude. But yeah, the camps are an important narrative. So. It was an old camp in Mountaindale. It's on a historic marker. I can't remember the name right now because I didn't sleep too well last night. But we're dedicating it on August 13th, and one for the Concord this fall. That'll be at Resorts World. So it's all on our website, all the text, yeah. But I will take note about the camps because you're the second or third person that said something.
One of the things that I really loved also about once I started learning more about the region is just how it served all classes and economic stratas of people and kind of continued to do that through its entire life. You know, I think still into, the end times of it, there were still, very, very inexpensive boarding houses and places you could go, and then, very, very fancy, evolved resorts.
Like the Concord, yeah. So there were 5-star and then like 2-star and kosher style, not kosher. I mean, there was a hotel that served lobster, so a big range in the Borscht Belt. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question, sir.
Can you talk about the Catskill Museum that's going to be opening sort of the end of July? And is that connected, or do you have any relationship with the historic market program with the museum?
I'm not involved with the Catskills Museum at this time. The marker project is separate, but there have long been discussions and plans to open something, and they have a website. It's called the Borscht Belt Museum, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But the marker project is a different beast. It really encourages people to get out and look at the landscape and connects all of the towns of the Borscht Belt. But the museum is set to have a festival in a few weeks, and I keep my eye on it as I keep my eye on the pulse of what's going on up there.
Cool. A couple of housekeeping notes. Today, the final event of today's Yitzhak program is at 5 o'clock in the back of the concert hall. It's the Nigunim Trio featuring Frank London and Lauren Sklamberg of the Klezmatics, along with Rob Schwimmer, with special guest Merlin Shepard, clarinetist all the way from Brighton, England, coming to us. So I'm not sure if it's Nigunim Trio or Nigunim Quartet, but we'll figure that out after they play. Thank you so much for being here. If you weren't here, it would kind of be silly for us to like talking to an empty room. And thank you for your engagement and your terrific questions. And finally, I just really want to thank Sam Sadigursky and Marisa Scheinfeld for blessing us with your creativity and your deeply meaningful projects here. Thank you. And what I'd like you to do is please allow Marisa and Sam to leave the room. Don't stop them midway up the steps. Let them go out front. Probably the best place to go is wherever they're selling the merchandise.
I'm going to be hanging outside the bookstore signing copies of my books, so I'm happy to talk to anyone, and I'll be here for a little bit.
You too?
I will do the same.
Yeah.
Same thing. So up at the bookstore is really our destination now. We need to clear the room. Thank you so much.
Thank
See you
you.
later.